retirarlo. Entonces, a mí me gustaría quedarme un poco con esta idea de qué posibilidad tenemos de, no sé, con algo más positivo, ¿no? Que yo llevo tantas décadas ya en esto del feminismo que a veces digo, necesito un poquito de energía, ¿no? De ver que podemos hacer algo. Si os parece, vamos en el orden de las intervenciones. Rafael, ¿quieres empezar tú, por ejemplo? El micrófono, ahora.
Se oye, sí, vale. Bueno, comentar, bueno, primero que me ha gustado mucho todas las demás intervenciones, la verdad es que ha sido una mesa bastante didáctica, ¿no? Sí, es obvio que algo está cambiando, ¿no? Desde hace ya bastante tiempo, de hecho, ¿no? Empezaron las mujeres, sobre todo por mi parte, ¿no? En la industria del videojuego, empezaron a reclamar su presencia, ¿no? Porque en un principio realmente solo se podían escoger, te imponían un protagonista masculino cis heteronormativo. Con el paso del tiempo, si es verdad que se abrió la posibilidad de ya escoger un género. Y claro, esto fue un avance porque la industria se dio cuenta de que también las mujeres pueden jugar y poco a poco se han ido incluyendo otro tipo de representaciones también, también al darse cuenta de que no tienen un target, como comentaba, ¿no? Un target homogéneo, sino que hay muchísimas personas que juegan y que merecen estos espacios para sentirse identificados, ¿no? Y en ese sentido, sí, también creo que el poder de la unión, ¿no? de las voces de muchas personas puede hacer que la situación cambie, ¿no? De hecho, si los juegos se han vuelto más inclusivos y las representaciones han mejorado, ha sido porque ha habido una comunidad que ha estado demandando ese contenido continuamente. Así que, bueno, si la situación sigue así, pues auguramos que la cosa mejore.
Pues adelante, muchas gracias. Rafael, Arantxa, ¿cómo lo ves tú?
Aprovecho también para agradecer el haber estado en esta mesa, ¿no? Con el resto de mis compañeras y mis compañeros. Sí, efectivamente, yo creo que, que este ejercicio que nosotros estamos haciendo, ¿no? Nos sirve justamente para ver cómo unas categorías sociales que existen, que son como cajitas donde se nos coloca, ¿no? Cómo los sujetos con nuestro agenciamiento, pues podemos de alguna manera buscar el lugar, el punto de fuga donde fragmentar esas categorías. Entonces, hoy por hoy esas categorías siguen vigentes y se nos siguen aplicando, pero hay que pensar efectivamente, ¿no? En la transformación social que nos lleve a algún lugar donde esas categorías no se nos impongan de esa manera. O sea que sí.
Lo del punto de fuga me encanta, Arantxa, lo del punto de fuga. En eso andamos toda la vida, ¿no? Buscando los puntos de fuga que nos lleven a lugares un poco más habitables, ¿no? Donde se pueda vivir un poco mejor. Muchísimas gracias. Muchas gracias, Patricia y Ricardo. Lo que veo es que ya, bueno, vosotras mismas estáis haciendo la intervención, ¿no? Porque estáis creando este espacio nuevo, dando voz y dando lugar a mucha gente que no lo tenía antes, ¿no? Y bueno, ya os he dicho, me parece súper interesante la propuesta.
Sí, muchas gracias. También me encantó participar en esta mesa. Y lo que puedo decir es que precisamente esa urgencia como de aperturar, ¿verdad? Aperturar todas las posibilidades para que realmente hayan espacios interactivos pero reales, en donde todos y todas se sientan parte, ¿verdad? Por ejemplo, en este archivo, para nosotros fue muy importante que haya esa ventanita abierta, que sea un archivo vivo, que quede permanente para que cada quien se sienta totalmente con el derecho de poder ser del archivo, ¿verdad? Y no cerrarlo, sino precisamente como aperturar y dar esa posibilidad real, ¿verdad? Eso, digamos, de nuestra parte, queríamos comentar. No sé si Ricardo quiere...
Muchas gracias, Ricardo.
Sí, tal vez creo que no sé si se me escucha.
Sí.
Ok. Creo que para nosotros lo más importante, incluso cuando Patricia nos conjuntamos, por decirlo de alguna manera, ella me comenta su proyecto, yo sí veía la necesidad de justo visibilizar, porque en Costa Rica es una sociedad bastante conservadora todavía, digamos, y los temas de LGTBIQ y más son bastante fuertes y bastante incipientes todavía. Entonces yo decía, necesitamos que eso trascienda la academia, trascienda la investigación, y por eso creo que además como una universidad pública, en donde tenemos también diversidad de estudiantes, veíamos necesario como eso. Y creo que también ese tiene que ser mucho el aporte desde los que trabajamos desde la comunicación, ya sea institucional o comunicación desde algún medio tradicional o real, ¿verdad? Y es visibilizar esta diversidad vista más allá, digamos, desde lo sexual, sino una diversidad en donde básicamente todos somos iguales sin importar cómo nos definamos en nuestro género, en nuestra forma de sentirnos. Entonces creemos eso, que hay que abrir los espacios, y creo que a partir de abrir esos espacios van a surgir muchos más, y esperamos no solo en Costa Rica, sino tener un archivo diverso en Centroamérica y en muchos otros espacios.
Buenísimo, buenísimo, Ricardo. Así empezamos este congreso, hablando precisamente de la confluencia necesaria que tiene que haber entre lo académico y la transferencia del conocimiento a la sociedad, porque para potenciar la justicia social no hay otra forma de hacerlo. No se puede estar solamente en un ámbito ni en el otro. Yo creo que tiene que ser un poco esta confluencia. Y esta mesa me parece que ha sido un buen ejemplo de eso, porque yo creo que todas las personas que estamos aquí andamos un poco así, ¿no? en estos mundos, ¿no? Intentando avanzar en todos los sentidos. Raúl, bueno, a ver, por lo menos las personas de esta mesa estamos todas conectadas. Tenemos la dirección de correo, podemos seguir hablando, y también, Raúl, en cuanto nos mandes el spot, lo leeremos y lo miraremos con mucha atención, ¿de acuerdo?
De acuerdo. Me gustaría hacer una intervención breve.
Sí.
Sí, porque había preparado todo, pero se descompuso el módem y, bueno, fue un relajo.
Sí, no te preocupes.
Quiero comentar dos cosas. La primera, en relación a tu pregunta de la intervención, ¿no? ¿Cómo se puede intervenir a partir de en el caso de la presentación que yo tenía de la creación de spots? La creación de estos spots que nosotros hicimos tiene un fuerte peso académico, por una parte, porque yo lo organicé como coordinador de un centro de investigaciones en la Ciudad de México que coordina un evento internacional que se llama Lo Translúdico, que ya lleva 7 sesiones, un coloquio internacional. Nos pusimos en combinación con un grupo de activistas, artistas, creadoras de arte que se llama Piratas de Género, y desarrollamos estos spots de radio que precisamente lo que hacen es recuperar la experiencia de las personas trans y ligadas a la academia a partir de una narrativa discursiva que tiene que ver mucho con medios de información, precisamente para generar productos nuevos, ¿no? Entonces la intervención que nosotros hacemos tiene que ver con esta fusión de cuestiones académicas con cuestiones activistas y musicales en una propuesta de spots de radio como tal, ¿no? Yo creo que desde ahí es la propuesta de intervención que nosotros tenemos. Te puedo poner en menos de un minuto, parte del producto que sacamos, que cuando tú dices qué productos son los que salen de esa intervención, nosotros de esos spots sacamos 2 elementos importantes. La primera es un sonidero, que acá en Latinoamérica se manejan mucho los sonideros, como el sonido La Changa, el Cóndor, que tiene que ver con una persona con un micrófono en la calle con bocinas que pone música, ¿no? Que tiene que ver con los bailes populares donde van muchas personas trans a bailar. Nosotros generamos un sonidero trans, que ahorita los voy a poner, que tiene que ver con la relación que tiene Michel Foucault con el panóptico, de una persona que ve y analiza todo y hace la narrativa de la historia y cuenta la historia de las personas trans, los lugares trans, los chistes trans, toda la cultura trans, ¿no? Es parte de uno. Y parte también de los spots era también que hiciéramos talleres con personas, y cuando las personas llegaran al taller tuvieran al sonidero y enseñarles acerca de la violencia hacia las mujeres, acerca de la prevención, acerca de la diversidad, acompañados de música con una persona que estuviera capacitada en cuestiones teóricas, y desde ahí empezar a capacitarlos a través del baile, ¿no? Entonces creo que era un mecanismo de intervención bastante interesante. Y bueno, básicamente voy a poner 15 segundos de lo que era el sonidero, ¿no? Y posteriormente contesto una pregunta que me hicieron por ahí.
Actos transfóbicos, capítulo 3 de 4. El baile Hey familia, canción dedicada a la transfobia nuestra de cada día. El gran maestro Amador Pérez, la Nereida. Uy, padrino, de rojo, tururú.
Ay, mana, tú baile con todo.
Sí, eso básicamente era un sonidero que hicimos que narraba la historia y se nos hizo algo muy bonito esta cuestión de mezclar la parte académica con la experiencia de las personas trans del colectivo y de ahí hacer una fusión estructurando las distintas partes de medios de comunicación que tienen los spots. Hay una parte que tiene los horóscopos, para la cual analizamos los horóscopos, hicimos el horóscopo de una de ellas en relación a toda la historia. Hay una parte que habla de los medios de información de Televisa, Jacobo Zabudowski, y hay un debate constante de la persona clave debatiendo con los medios de información, diciendo todo lo que callan al final. Cada spot termina con una historia, con esta historia continuará como una pregunta y reflexión, después se pone una categoría de transfobia que ya se está usando en América Latina, que la diseñamos por ahí, y se conecta con el siguiente spot, ¿no? Entonces, esos eran un poco los productos que nosotros sacamos. Obviamente, estos proyectos pusieron sobre la mesa el lenguaje y los medios de comunicación en el sentido de qué productos se han hecho para hablar de la diversidad sexual trans, ¿no? Eso era muy importante. La mayoría de investigaciones que se han hecho hablan desde la victimización, desde la reivindicación de derechos humanos, que es muy bueno, pero dejan de lado la cultura de ambiente, la cultura trans. Entonces, lo que hicimos fue recuperar y analizar la transfobia interna que también se vive a través de los medios de información, ¿no? Y con una categoría que acá nosotros decimos que es el perreo o bufeo, ¿no? Cómo esto sirve también para afirmar una identidad, para generar discriminación interna y también es un foco que se debe de atender, ¿no? Nosotros estuvimos trabajando mucho con esto y bueno, los spots los pueden escuchar y en otro momento voy a escribir. Nos hacen una pregunta de Raúl, ¿qué opinas de los chistes que se hacen con el término maricón como sinónimo de homosexual sin dinero y el término gay como sinónimo de homosexual adinerado, ¿no? Nosotros también analizamos las categorías para hacer alusión a las personas trans de manera despectiva, de manera histórica en cada década que planteamos, pero también analizamos cómo estas categorías despectivas se apropian las personas trans y las reivindican, ¿no? La categoría maricón también es reivindicada, la categoría, acá se usa mucho en el sur de México la categoría mampo, ¿no? Que tiene que ver con el ayudante del veterinario que ayuda a desviar el órgano sexual para la inseminación, y aquí se les dice mampos a las personas diversas, ¿no? Quienes al nacer fueron asignados como varones. Entonces hay una reapropiación discursiva también de las categorías, ¿no? Eso también nosotros lo planteamos dentro de los spots. Son spots bastante saturados en información, pero de una manera muy rica, porque narran una historia que atraviesa todas las décadas y culminan analizando precisamente con el discurso de un peritaje en relación a una persona trans, cómo aluden los distintos discursos al cuerpo trans, y con una nota periodística de un periódico que está a favor de los grupos diversos, que hace una nota que cierra todos los spots de radio, ¿no? Entonces, por eso era muy importante escucharlo, que yo les pasara el texto, pero quizás en otro momento podría ser, pero en alusión a las dos preguntas que hacen, nosotros creemos que es generar productos nuevos a partir de la creación, llegar al límite del concepto que se esté desarrollando dentro de lo que se vaya a trabajar, como en el caso de los spots, nosotros los alargamos, hiciéramos una fractura del tiempo lineal, ¿no? Y demás, pero eso ya lo estamos escribiendo, ¿no? Ahorita básicamente era como compartirles un poco el trabajo que hicimos, y sin más, pues, me disculpo.
Muchas gracias,
pues,
Raúl.
No, muchas gracias, Raúl. Yo me alegro mucho que nos hayas podido mostrar esto, lo hemos oído perfectamente. Me ha gustado mucho tu respuesta también con respecto a la apropiación de los términos despectivos, que esto es algo que también se puede hacer, ¿no? Como una manera de interactuar y también de participar y de tener alguna... veo, Rafael, que hay alguna pregunta para ti y hay otras preguntas, pero vamos a tratar de contestar en el chat. Quiero darles medio minuto a Rocío y a Beatriz para cerrar la sesión, porque tenemos la sesión de clausura que tiene que empezar a las 6:30, pero sí que quiero daros un minuto también a vosotras para que veáis sobre lo que hemos preguntado, ¿no? Esta capacidad de interactuar o de potenciar la participación, ¿cómo lo veis?
Beatriz, empieza tú si quieres.
Vale, yo, bueno, nada, decir una pequeña reflexión que es también el motivo principal de lo que estoy investigando, que son los medios de comunicación, que, bueno, la afirmación de si no existe en los medios es que no existe en la realidad, es una afirmación muy, no sé, falaz, ¿no? Porque que no lo veamos en los medios no significa que no exista en la realidad. Entonces, nosotros como ciudadanos tenemos que reclamar que todos los campos, todas las minorías, la igualdad, la no discriminación se visibilice y sobre todo en los medios de comunicación. Entonces, nosotros tenemos que reclamarlo y a partir de vías democráticas y también un impulso aparte político para que la rendición de cuentas, en este caso de los medios de comunicación, sea efectiva y sea real.
Sí, yo en ese sentido yo estoy totalmente de acuerdo con ella. Si bien es cierto que, por ejemplo, tratamos en el tema de las cuotas en nuestro trabajo, porque yo, por un lado, ya en mi trabajo de fin de máster traté el tema de las cuotas en política. Beatriz es experta en medios de comunicación. Pensamos que podía ser un buen mix en ese sentido. Porque al final es una cuestión de referentes, ¿no? Es decir, que haya por lo menos referentes femeninos dentro del ámbito público, en el privado también, pero sobre todo en el público que se supone que está más regulado. No podemos estar todavía con cuotas que no llegan al 40% de presencia femenina. Y sobre todo también tener en cuenta las audiencias, ¿no? Que al final las grandes cadenas, ¿no? En ese sentido tenemos que ser conscientes de que se dirigen a unas cantidades de población muy importantes, de las cuales la mayor parte de la audiencia son mujeres, y por tanto si esas mujeres no ven referentes femeninos, ya sea o bien dando las noticias o los programas de televisión o incluso como expertos cuando van a los debates, es muy probable que muchas veces nosotras mismas nos infravaloremos y digamos, bueno, es que no podemos llegar a estos puestos porque no vemos en quién reflejarnos, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que en ese sentido hay que incidir mucho en esta cuestión para fomentar la igualdad real, ya no solo que sea legalmente, sino efectiva y real.
Muchísimas gracias a todas las personas que habéis participado hoy. Si hay alguna pregunta se puede seguir contestando en el chat. A mí realmente me parece que ha sido una mesa modélica, insisto, estoy muy contenta de haber tenido esta oportunidad de trabajar con vosotras hoy y seguimos en contacto. A mí ya sabéis dónde estoy, o sea que seguimos en contacto, ¿de acuerdo? Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, y Eva, sin más, vamos a dar paso a la conferencia de clausura, ¿os parece?
Efectivamente, vamos a
Vale.
ello.
Lisa. Hi, Lisa, how are you? Okay, I'm going to do a very brief presentation in Spanish for the people here, okay? And then I will do the introduction in English. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, voy a hacer una muy breve presentación primero en castellano, porque Lisa va a hacer su presentación en inglés, pero va a mostrar su PowerPoint en castellano, de manera que se pueda seguir de las dos formas. Voy a hacer una brevísima presentación en castellano y luego pasaré a presentarla en inglés. Lisa Coughlin es catedrática en el Departamento de Comunicación de Boston College. Ha sido la jefa de departamento durante muchos años y también la directora del Departamento de Estudios de la Mujer. Ella es una referencia en estudios, en publicaciones sobre estudios de televisión, de género, cuestiones como por ejemplo las violaciones en series de televisión. Ha publicado muchos libros y muchísimos artículos en revistas de primera magnitud. Y yo quiero decir que Lisa es una persona maravillosa. Yo tengo la suerte de haberla conocido desde hace mucho tiempo. Hemos coeditado un número especial un número monográfico de la revista Investigaciones Feministas. Y bueno, para mí es una gran amiga y una gran persona. Así que, bueno, paso ahora a presentarla en inglés. Lisa, I'll do the presentation in English now, okay? Lisa Coughlin is professor at the Department of Communication at Boston College. She has been the chair of the department and of the Radcliffe Graduate Consortium in Women's Studies. She has published extensively on topics related to communication, particularly to television and sexual violence. And she has many books. She has written books and edited books, but I'm just going to give you the title of one of them. That is Rape on Prime Time, Television, Masculinity, and Sexual Violence. She's a regular contributor and reviewer for many different journals, such as Critical Studies in Mass Communication, Women's Studies in Communication, International Journal of Communication. Recently, we co-edited a monographic number in Investigaciones Feministas at Universidad Complutense in Madrid. I have to say that Lisa Kuglanz is a wonderful professional person. She's a wonderful professor, but she's a great person. I consider her my friend. We have been together many times, and it is the original idea was to be in Sevilla this time, wasn't it, Lisa? Unfortunately, we cannot be this year, but I hope that next year we'll be able to really be together in person, along with Juan Carlos and Eva and everybody there, so that we can have an even better time in Sevilla. Okay. Her presentation today, she's going to be talking. I opened this Congress talking about Basque women filmmakers and saying that it was an advanced in the way that women filmmakers were very few and scarce, and how they were doing this transnational view on getting away a little bit from the locality of the Basque culture to a very transnational view. And I think that the figure of Alice Rohrwacher that Lisa will be talking about today is incredibly significant in terms of an Italian filmmaker that is making an international big presence in the international cinematography. And I think that she's really a pioneer. And I think that this presentation is going to be very, very enlightening for all of us. So the title of the talk by Lisa is Coming of Age in the Films of Alice Rohrwacher. And Lisa, all yours. The floor is yours. Come on.
Thank you. I'm going to try to share the screen for the PowerPoint to start off. All good?
Yes, it is there. Can you maybe that we can see it perfectly? Can you try to show the full screen instead of the?
Yes, you know, on my end it looks like full screen. Let me try again.
That's okay. That's okay. If that is, we can. No. That's okay.
There we go.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Now, right? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. On my screen it looks full screen. So.
Yes, it is. It does now. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to say hello to everyone and thank you so much for joining on the final session of the Gendercom online conference at the University of Seville. I was trying to review, as Pilar said, we've been together for a long time. I think this is the 4th gender conference that I've participated in with Pilar at the University of Seville. And I wanted to thank Juan Carlos for his vision and leadership, and also Pilar and Eva and all the conference organizers and graduate students who worked so hard to put together the program. It's really been a very challenging year, and it's great to see everyone's efforts coming together to produce this terrific conference. So thank you so much. I really appreciate being part of it. Today, I'm going to talk about coming of age narratives, which means basically stories that focus on individuals transitioning from childhood to adulthood in 2 important films of Italian filmmaker Alice Rohrwacher. The title of the presentation is shown here on the screen. In English is Coming of Age in the Films of Alice Rohrwacher. I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, including the film trailers from the 2 films I'm talking about. And then I'll try to respond to any questions that people may have. As Pilar mentioned, she has translated my PowerPoint into Spanish, so I'm speaking in English and you see the PowerPoint there. My presentation and analysis is going to focus on Rohrwacher's first 2 feature-length films. The first, entitled Corporal Celeste, in English translated as Heavenly Body, released in 2011, and the second, Le Meraviglie, in English translated as The Wonders, released in 2014. These 2 films both feature adolescent girls as protagonists, and I'm going to focus on some of the ways in which Rohrwacher is able to provide treatments of these characters that really allow them to represent humanity as a whole, rather than showing simply a gendered experience that is specifically female or feminine. It's worth noting also that Rohrwacher has directed a 3rd feature film entitled Lazzaro Felice, or in English, Happy is Lazzaro, which was released in 2017, and also has received terrific critical acclaim. Rohrwacher's treatment of Lazaro in that film, a male protagonist, also in a coming-of-age narrative, also adds more evidence how Rohrwacher's technique and message are not limited by gender. However, my analysis today is just going to focus on Corpo Celeste and Le Meraviglie. I'm going to provide a brief synopsis of each film for reference in case some of you listening may not have seen them. I am definitely a fan of Rohrwacher's work, and you know, as Pilar noted, Rohrwacher is really a very important contemporary film director, and I highly recommend these films if you are able to have access to them. You might be able to find one of them even on YouTube. Corpo Celeste, based on a novel of the same name by Ana Maria Ortese, premiered at Cannes in 2011. It follows a 13-year-old protagonist named Marta, played by first-time actor Ile Vianello. Now, Marta has recently moved with her family, consisting of mother and sister, to a small Italian town in Reggio Calabria from Switzerland. The film focuses very closely on Marta, who moves through her days in a fairly isolated state, observing the actions of her family members of her church, including the priest and teacher of a confirmation class, and also a group of boys who she observes from a distance. Those who have commented on or interpreted the film usually point out some of the ways in which Rohrwacher emphasizes Marta's marginalization or peripheral position. Marta's introspective gaze seems to contain elements of criticism, which I'll talk about later, as often noted by other observers. Marta is not well cared for by any individual or organized entity, but she is able to use her internal resources to discover her own voice and opinion by the end of the film, deciding to actually walk away literally from the church and from her family just as her confirmation ceremony begins. In effect, for Marta, walking away from the organized church and her own family, she discovers a miracle of her own choosing. I'm going to try to show the official trailer for the film. I tried to cut off the ad. You might have to see part of an ad to start off. While watching this, try to notice Marta's location in space and also her physical presentation.
You have to understand one thing about directing.
Okay.
That
Lisa, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We are seeing a PowerPoint presentation, but not the video. That could be because you share the PowerPoint window, but not the the whole thing.
Okay, maybe shall we just skip the trailers and continue?
No, that's fine. The thing you need to do is to stop presenting and then begin once more, maybe, and then you choose to share the whole screen, not just the application of PowerPoint. You know what I mean? Sorry, bit complicated to explain. So may I help you? So please try to share again, and then you share the whole screen, not just PowerPoint. So we will be able to see whatever you present on your screen.
All right, let's try.
Okay, sorry.
Let's try this.
Now, yes.
Okay.
Guarda! Ah, eccola qua. Ciao, bellissima! Quanti anni hai?
Gesù, prendimi tra le tue mani e tienimi stretta fino a domani.
Non vale, non è una preghiera. Marta, è pronta per la cresima?
Sì, ma lei aveva già frequentato in Svizzera, già è preparato.
Allora guardiamoci intorno e vediamo che cosa ci propone oggi il mondo. La Chiesa deve essere di nuovo protagonista, deve tornare a proporre degli eventi straordinari.
Sai cosa dicevano di Gesù?
Che dicevano?
Che era matto.
Ma quando mai?
Credo, questa è la nostra fede, questa è la fede della nostra Chiesa e noi ci onoriamo di professarla in Gesù Cristo nostro Signore. Amen. A questo punto il vescovo disegnerà e tirerà uno schiaffo simbolico così.
È Gesù che urla, tu come te lo immagini?
Buono.
Con gli occhi azzurri che ti vuole abbracciare.
Sì.
Thank you, Lisa. We are back to the presentation now.
Yes.
We made it. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Eva, for the instructions. Very
No problem. So later on, I'll be able to refer back to some of the elements from the trailer in the analysis. But let me move on to Le Meraviglie, which is Rohrwacher's second feature-length film. This film follows a 14-year-old girl named Gelsomina, played by first-time actor Maria Alexandra Lungu, a similarly introspective and resilient young protagonist in a story that's more overtly autobiographical for Rohrwacher. Gelsomina's family lives in rural poverty, barely subsisting through sales of honey. The family is quite isolated and has little contact with outsiders. When a television crew arrives in their town to film a competition program focusing on rural farm products, Gelsomina signs up against her father's wishes, but is disappointed by both the production and the outcome. To give an idea of Le Meraviglie, I'm going to show the trailer for this film as well. This film carries critiques of the patriarchal family, the loss of traditional values and lifestyles, the undue influence of superficial media culture, and the misguided efforts of the state to intervene in rural affairs. And you could probably see from the trailer of Corporal Celeste that this film is highly critical of the Catholic Church.
Bevi.
Sorry, Lisa, we're not seeing
Yeah, there it comes. Okay?
Yes, right.
C'è un buco nella maschera. Dopo la mi pizzicano.
Vabbè, vai in macchina, Marinella, e non rompe.
Che ci faccio io qui? Il paese delle meraviglie. Sarà qui.
Le signore è molto belle.
Questo perché? Rifacciamo? Selezioneremo solo 7 famiglie. La famiglia più impegnata nella tutela del nostro patrimonio riceverà un sacco di soldi.
Partecipiamo alla selezione al Paese delle Meraviglie.
Facciamo anche questa stronzata.
Qui sono anni e anni che non si muove più niente. Forse è così si crea un po' di lavoro, viene un po' di turismo.
Ma noi ce l'abbiamo, un lavoro bellissimo.
Vuoi fare la contadina?
Perché no?
Vuoi costruire un muro intorno a lei?
Non mi posso scrivere.
E non ho mai detto niente.
Meraviglioso! Un applauso! applauso.
Okay, everyone back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. By way of preview, I'm going to divide the talk into several main sections. First, I will provide some theoretical context for the discussion of coming of age in these two films. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Rohrwacher herself, and a little bit on critical reception of her films. And finally, I will present the analysis and central argument. I'm going to argue that by presenting gender as relevant to, but not definitive of, her protagonists in these films, Rohrwacher opens up a rare space for these young girls to represent humanity as a whole, rather than to represent or rewrite representational codes for young women particularly. Rohrwacher is pretty well known for including many neorealist elements in her films, and both of these have many examples. She combines these in these two films with the theme of an innocent witness to a range of larger events. Among the neorealist elements in these two films are the use of first-time actors, which she does with both protagonists, linkages between individuals and the landscape, a concerted effort to create a sense of lived reality that reveals a gritty truth about life, and a fairly slow and uneventful narrative that approximates the passage of actual time or the experience of actual life, rather than a compressed, action-packed sequence of dramatic highlights. It might also be said that Rohrwacher's films possess a clear sense of right and wrong, like neorealist films in the post-war period tended to do, with the little person in the form of her protagonist being influenced and buffeted by larger forces that are generally understood as malignant. These elements are combined with the use of young adolescents that also echoes a neorealist penchant for the use of children to represent an innocent nation or a naive point of view in examining complex social and political problems. As Luciano and Scarparo note, in Italian neorealist films, the child is usually a boy, left to carry the nation forward at the end of many of these films. And while there are a few notable examples from the post-war period with girls as the center piece, such as Bellissima by Visconti, even Visconti's protagonist child is both very young and also the object of derision within the narrative rather than the representation of for viewer identification. Rohrwacher instead presents us with adolescent girls whose point of view is both sympathetic and universalized. While more recent Italian films by women directors, including the Comencini sisters, have carried feminist themes and centered on female protagonists, including young girls, representative films analyzed by Luciano and Scarparo tend to focus on gender as a limitation for the protagonist characters, who nonetheless push against these boundaries in the coming of age process. Thus, in Italian coming of age films focusing on girls, it is more likely that gender is often treated as a negative and defining feature of their identity. So I'm going to argue that Rohrwacher is doing something new and different. Silvia Angeli has noted that, quote, showing the faults of society through the eyes of a child is a common trope in cinema, particularly in Italy, and constitutes, quote, a frequently adopted narrative device in the works of Italian neorealist masters, such as in De Sica's The Children Are Watching Us, Shoeshine, and Bicycle Thieves, as well as Rossellini's Rome Open City, Paisa, and Germany Year Zero. These all present, quote, the strategic deployment of a child character to provoke a reflection of the shortcomings of adult behavior within a broader social context. Carolina Rocha and Georgia Seminet have observed that younger children are more frequently cast in filmic narratives constructed on historical memory and trauma, while adolescents, who are characterized by rebelliousness against adult rule, the loss of innocence, sexual awakening, and self-conscious behavior, represent ideal vehicles through which a scathing critique is leveled on adults and adult society. Angeli argues that the ambiguity and flexibility of adolescence provide a fertile ground for Rohrwacher's narratives, noting that the director herself has admitted that she, quote, very much likes transitional characters and periods. While several analyses have examined girls at the center of Italian films, and several have provided discussions of feminist themes in coming-of-age films by Italian directors such as the Comencini sisters and Costanza Quatrilio, still, the number of these films is small, and Rohrwacher's works provide something of a new dimension in this strand of filmmaking. Another important theoretical context for her films is that of Girlhood Studies, which theorizes the implications of films and other media texts that focus on girls and girlhood at the center of their narratives. Such stories themselves are of relatively recent development. Theorists such as Sarah Prjansky in her 2014 work, Spectacular Girls, have examined the functions and limitations of narratives focusing on girls, as well as the ways in which girls themselves are presented. I believe that Rohrwacher's films move beyond a common dichotomy described by Prjansky and also by others as a tendency to present girls in one of two frames, either the can-do or the at-risk girl. The main critique that Prjansky levels against this dichotomy is that it reifies an understanding of girls as representing something unusual or spectacular within most texts. Girls tend not to simply exist in stories, but instead their existence is exaggerated into something either amazing or tragic, and often largely symbolic, effectively calling attention to the narrative anomaly, that is, its focus on a girl. Rohrwacher's films, in contrast, resist both poles and instead manage to do something that is again quite rare, treat their protagonists as representatives of humanity rather than of their gender. Danielle Hipkins provides an analysis of Corpo Celeste in relation to girl protagonists in Italian film, solidly linking this relatively new phenomenon with female-authored cinema in Italy. Hipkins assesses Rohrwacher's critique of the figure of the Velina, or television showgirl, that appears in Corpo Celeste in the form of Marta's younger cousin, and in Le Meraviglie in the form of a TV star played by Monica Bellucci. Rohrwacher's protagonists are deliberately contrasted to these examples through their introspection, lack of corporeal display and adornment, and eagerness to be actors in their own world. Rohrwacher was born in 1980 in Fiesole, Tuscany, near Florence, so she was about 30 years old at the release of Corpo Celeste. She grew up in Castel Giorgio in a beekeeping family with a German father, as echoed in Le Meraviglie, and is the younger sister of actress Alba Rohrwacher, who is featured in all three of her films. She studied at the University of Turin and says that she did not discover film until her time at university and grew up basically without much knowledge of film at all. She's also worked on the HBO Rai miniseries, My Brilliant Friend. I don't know if people are familiar with that series. Rohrwacher's work has met with critical acclaim, including the Grand Jury Prize at the Cannes Film Festival for Le Meraviglie. Her work is known for its rich citation of film history. Manu Yanez Murillo noted in a comment that, quote, in all her films, echoing Pasolini's slum-like images of Rome, past and present blur together in Rohrwacher's vision of an Italy in stasis, a land where the incessant cycle of dispossession is fueled by the dogmas of faith and profit. Both Corpo Celeste and Le Meraviglie quote neorealist films as well as Fellini. A notable example quoting Fellini in Le Meraviglie comes at the end of the film, where an image of a Jesus statue strapped to the top of a minivan drives through the mountains and appears to fly through the air, until the moment that the car screeches to a halt and the statue flies off the car and flies off a bridge, landing in the river below. The image reminds viewers of the Jesus statue suspended from a helicopter in the opening sequence of La Dolce Vita. Gelsomino's name is also a clever wink at viewers and is an unusual name borrowed from Fellini's muse in La Strada. In Corpo Celeste, the scavenging boys in the distance call to mind scenes of desperation in post-war neo-realist films such as Paisa, in which children seem to fend for themselves amongst heaps of refuse. Both of Rohrwacher's first two feature films rework coming-of-age narratives with a focus on teenage girls. While the films include themes of gender and power, as in the despicable treatment by priests of the women devoted to feeding and caring for them, Rohrwacher's films do not rest upon gender as a central identity of the protagonist. Marta's central quest is to understand her own relationship to the religion of those around her, and she ultimately rejects it when it is clear that she cannot be a believer on her own terms. Gelsomina is maligned by her father for her gender at some points, but as a whole, she is able to ignore his outbursts and find comfort in the critiques of his sexism that her mother and aunt express. 3 themes in Rohrwacher's first 2 films contribute to the presentation of adolescent girls as representatives of humanity rather than of their gender. First, their marginalization places them in an ideal position to critique society and its institutions. The protagonists are not marginalized because of their gender, but for other more generalized reasons due to location, their lack of connection with peer groups, their social class, the identity or composition of their families. Their coming-of-age stories provide critiques of church, family, patriarchy, the media, the city, and Italy as a whole. Finally, the protagonists are strong and introspective, drawing on an inner strength to resist forms of domination and to explore and understand their world, in effect, representing those who share their point of view. Both films feature marginalized protagonists whose peripheral positioning allows them to provide a sympathetic point of view for the viewer and thus to represent identification in relation to the larger world. In Marta's case, marginality is emphasized in relation to the other characters in the film. Not only has she recently moved from Italy to Switzerland, but her catechism teacher repeatedly refers to your country as if she is not Italian at all. She is physically smaller than the other students in the class and visibly different from the other girls, dressing almost always in plain brown pants and a sweater, which you could see in the trailer. Marta walks alone through the city, prepares her own meals, and watches television while eating alone. Gelsomina, for her own part, faces challenges of marginalization through her rural and isolated location. At a rural fair, she is mocked for her peasant appearance and demeanor and ostracized by some of the other girls. In spite of their marginalization, though, both Marta and Gelsomina show inner strength and curiosity, asking questions and pursuing their own path when necessary. The marginal position of these protagonists provides an excellent vantage point for the critique of major institutions. Most notably for these 2 films, Marta is positioned to cast a critical gaze on the church, as I mentioned earlier, and Gelsomina on the forces of modernization that are driving her family out of their home and their livelihood. Rohrwacher offers a critique of physical objectification of girls and women in her critique of the Velina figure. In one telling exchange, Marta's younger cousin, who has thoroughly bought into the performance and adornment aspects of femininity, there was a little scene of this in the trailer of the little girls dancing in the long dresses. So the cousin asserts that she wants to be a saint so that she can receive more gifts. When Marta decides to cut off her hair as a sort of protest against the scene where the catechism teacher slaps her face, the younger cousin keeps her blonde hair and attaches it onto the cousin's own dark brown hair. The scene explicitly distances Marta from the values and attitudes of her younger cousin, while the younger girl's age shields her from the viewer's criticism, which must instead fall squarely on the larger culture, including but not limited to her family, the media, and the church. Gelsomina is also distanced from the TV star host of Country Wonders, a contest where families compete for a cash prize based on their traditional produce, when Gelsomina's family is defeated by a neighbor with no children who openly states that he plans to use the prize money to give up farming and open up a bed and breakfast for tourists. The film's denouement comes shortly after this scene and features Gelsomina's family resting on a bed outside their house. Can't get much more marginalized than that. The camera pans to the empty home that they have evidently been forced to abandon. The family's fate is treated with indifference by representatives of the state and the media. In both films, the protagonist is marked with symbolism and recognition within the diegesis that elevates her to a position of reverence. In Corporal Celeste, Marta is equated with religious symbolism throughout the film. Although somewhat by accident, Marta is chosen for the priest's special mission of bringing a crucifix from another church to her own in time for the confirmation ceremony. During the journey, Marta seeks enlightenment regarding the meaning of her catechism class teachings, discovers an alternate interpretation of Jesus's life to the one she's been taught, and ultimately she becomes unintentionally responsible for the statue's fall into the river. When Marta decides to leave the ceremony and embark on her own quest, she seems to walk on water. She walks through water and her dress floats just above the surface. She appears to be the chosen individual, the center of her own narrative, and the one with whom the audience can identify and perhaps can admire. Another little scene that you saw in the trailer is she's walking down the street and you see the leaves blow alongside. It really gives her a kind of a godlike feeling. Gelsomina, for her part, embodies the values of her family and her region, working as a farmer, watching over her younger siblings, and trying to solve problems for her family, even understanding the rages of her somewhat crazy and at times sexist father. She accepts her central role as protector, laborer, and problem solver, who is in turn treated with respect by both adults and children in her family, all of whom depend upon her. In reworking the coming-of-age narrative with adolescent girls at the center, and in pointing to gender without making it the center of identity for these protagonists, Rohrwacher opens up spaces of expression of other human characteristics, in distancing her central characters from the superficiality, objectification, and adornment of dominant frames of femininity. She again points toward the complex internal world of these girls, focusing instead on their struggle to understand themselves and find a meaningful place in the world without resorting to these familiar signifiers. By way of conclusion, Rohrwacher elevates her protagonists by treating them as honorable, curious, serious, caring, thoughtful, and hardworking individuals. By allowing Marta and Gelsomina to experience the world as girls, yet not conditioning their full experience through the lens of gender, Rohrwacher presents these protagonists as representatives of their age group, their region, social class, religion, and/or their family, in ways that are usually reserved for male characters. These girls are at the center of narratives that are about them on one level, but about larger institutions and those who are forgotten by them on another level. Their experiences show that a girl's point of view can represent that of others, regardless of gender. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Wonderful. You did a very good job in showing us the trailers and giving us a very good account of the full filmography of this wonderful filmmaker. I don't know if anybody has a question. Okay. Okay, I'm here. Yes. Let me see if anybody in the audience has a question. If not, I have too many questions and I don't want to overwhelm Lisa with my questions, but I will let, if anybody has a question, please go ahead, and otherwise I will start.
Maybe you go first and then the other ones will.
All right, great, thank you, Eva. Okay, this is a very interesting topic for me, Lisa, because as I told you, I wrote my dissertation precisely on the coming of age narratives. And I know that theoretically, as you said today in your presentation, it has been a very masculine and male genre. From Viernes to the whole German literature and the tradition, it was always this kind of story of maturation or becoming an adult, from being a child to being young to becoming an adult, but always in very male terms. So when women try, either in writing literature or in film, to tell those stories, it is always difficult for many reasons. First of all, there is not a model to follow. Women realize that female stories are different. How to tell them? It is an open road, but sometimes it is different. Okay, I could go on and on forever, but I'm gonna make you a question that is direct. I believe that the major merit of this filmmaker is precisely to avoid the easy path, that is victimization, that is sexualization, objectification. I mean, to start this road, particularly in Italy, that as Spain is this country where if you don't follow the Catholic path and this and that, it is very easy to fall for this victimization account. And instead of doing that, I think that she has chosen a way of showing agency, but without dismissing the challenges and the problems that we all face when we are growing up in these countries. And I think that it gives a more real perspective and a better role model for anybody that is watching the films. What do you think about that, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just some wonderful touch points for a question like that. In Corporal Celeste, for example, you often, especially in the second half of the film, you often get the feeling that Marta is in danger, and yet the filmmaker never realizes the danger. It always turns away. So you have this feeling of, would be the right word, endangerment, I guess you could say. So for example, she walks off looking for something, and the priest is driving by and he sees her, and he's kind of trying to help her, but he says, like, you know, get in the car and come with me, come on, because he doesn't want her to be by herself. But of course, when she ends up getting in the car, he kind of forces her to get in the car alone with him. And of course, you start feeling like, oh my gosh, here she is alone in the car. And so you have the memory of all these other stories, whether they are from your own experience or someone else's experience or from media narratives, that you think the narrative may go in a certain kind of perilous direction for Marta. And yet, so she brings you to the brink and then continually turns away from that. So instead, she has a different kind of experience. The priest is, instead of dangerous, he is indifferent, and he kind of ignores her and doesn't understand what's going on with her, and she winds up kind of leaving him behind. So I think you're absolutely right that Rohrwacher, not only she doesn't choose the easy path, but she even is kind of winking or acknowledging, like, I know what the easy path is, but I'm not going to take that path. I think that was a great question.
No, that was a great answer, Lisa. Okay, I will open the floor in case anybody has any other questions. Okay, I'll ask you a last question, Lisa. What is, because I was not so aware of the impact that this filmmaker is having in the international sphere. I am presently now editing a volume on Basque filmmakers, and I realized, and I've been studying how difficult it is for women filmmakers as directors to have an international impact. I mean, it is almost impossible. The whole business of making a movie is not only writing script, going into the pre-production, production, and post-production, phases, but it is finally getting the film out there. And then we start with the distribution and everything. And I think that Rohrwacher has been very successful in that respect, earning not only the public's approval, but also being able to place the films in international film festivals. How do you think that she has been able to do that? Is that because she's very good, or do you think that there is some kind of international way that she has been able to do that?
You know, I don't think I have a great insight for that question, but I do think in Italy, many of the actors and directors are connected to other actors and directors through their family, or, it's a kind of a small, I don't want to say enclosed, but it's a kind of a small universe. So it's possible that she benefits from having the sister Alba, who's a really fine actress who's been in many, many films and who is a little bit older than her. Other than that, I don't have a real good insight. Her third film, though, is under distribution with Netflix, so that will help.
Yes.
The other thing I guess I would comment on, I mean, she's not well known for her work on My Brilliant French. I think she helped write a couple of the episodes, but these international collaborations are becoming more common, and this one was an international collaboration between RAI, the Italian state media enterprise, and HBO. And so they made it's a mini series. They made it in Italian and they distribute it with English subtitles. So these are kind of new formats or new styles of initiative that I think if I had to advise someone, I probably would advise them to try to find these international touch points or collaborations that would kind of gain an audience through that.
I think that it is amazing that even if she kind of very wisely attacks the Italian tradition, she's getting into this family thing with her sister and having like the family clan kind of thing to promote her films, which I think that it is very good and from a very, very good perspective. So yeah, thank you so much, Lisa, for this wonderful closing of the Congress and this presentation. I don't know if anybody else has.
I have one question, if I may.
Go ahead, Eva, please.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm doing my thesis on the Sleeping Beauty, which could be one of the classic narratives, which also follows the classical stereotypes, structure, like one of the most antique narratives, right? So is this new narrative going to affect the subjectivities, like the construction of adolescent subjectivities, or well, this new, they have been rounding around for a long time, but are they affecting more than the classical ones? I don't know if you...
Sorry, the classical, what, I missed the last word. The classical...
Yeah, the classical...
No, just the classical ones, the classical stories. I think it's in it.
You know, there have been a number of
the classical
right. Yeah, I think people are definitely rewriting and remaking the classical stories. I don't know if that's what you were kind of referring to, but it's totally possible to remake these stories and, you know, recenter a different kind of experience, to rewrite the personality of the main character and, you know, give that character more screen time, to start the story at a different point in time. So there are plenty of rewrites that are doing these sorts of things. So I think there's quite a lot of hope for revisioning the classical narrative.
Yeah, actually, like, for example, with Sleeping Beauty, you have Maleficent, which is like changing the point of view and everything. So I was just curious about whether you have an opinion on if these new ones are getting closer to adolescents and new subjectivities, whether or the old ones would work better for construction of one's own subjectivity. Yeah.
I think I'm still missing the sense of the question. So you're asking whether older stories are more useful, or an older person at the center of the narrative?
Yeah, kind of like if the classical model would be and these new narratives with a change on the story or the focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the strengths of the coming of age narrative is that it has a very it is very deep in a way, that it's very much about what is it that makes a human person be able to develop from a child to an adult. And usually that theme, Pilar probably could speak to this as well, that theme says a lot about it usually says something about the person learning something bad about the world, that you come to understand the world in a more complex, more sophisticated way, but oftentimes through a kind of a negative, eye-opening kind of experience. So in that way, it could be that the classical coming of age narrative doesn't work that well for the fairy tale, because the fairy tale is not focused on having an insight about human nature. It's about something else, and it's usually about packaging something in a way that's very superficial and palatable. So I think that would be a particular challenge but I think that you will see people trying to do it. So I think there is potential there.
Yes, what we have in the different sessions in this conference that has lasted for 2 days, and we have had 13 different sessions. Something that I have really enjoyed a lot is that I think in that sense, Lisa, your final talk is a perfect ending to that, in the sense that we are moving on to not clinging to this story of victimization, all right? Not staying with this. Lisa, you and I, we have been here for decades in this kind of feminist fight, okay? And it gets a little bit tiring when you only hear things are bad and things are, you know, and discrimination in all senses, intersectional discrimination, race, gender, sex, this and that. Okay, we are moving on and we are seeing people, younger people in general, which I think that it is excellent, younger people that are moving on a little bit and saying we have to create different stories, we have to move on, we have to offer new paradigms in many different media genre. For example, we were talking about video games, we were talking about radio podcast, many different spheres, and I think, but this is a very good example of a filmmaker that says it is not easy. It is not easy to be a young female adolescent in Italy or in Spain or in the United States. It is not easy. And you're going to face these challenges and you're going to face these risks, but you have to be ready for that. And there is a way out. Mm-hmm. In other words, you can do that, okay? And you have to find the tools and the way to be able to do that. So that's what I like about this filmmaker, and that's what I like. What as a conclusion, maybe probably to this conference, I think that you have done an excellent job, Eva. I was very impressed by the quality of the presentations in this conference. I think that it has been great. I've seen a lot of young people doing things that are very, very challenging, very, very promising, very well done, academically sound, and very important, significant, really, for the advance of knowledge. So I think that this is a combination of people like Lisa and I that have been here for a long time and that have a kind of perspective on the feminist theoretical path, but also young people that are there. And I think that this is a very big accomplishment. And I want to congratulate you, Eva, and Juan Carlos, and everybody for this wonderful conference, really.
Thank you. It's been a nice pleasure to have you here and to have all the speakers. Really, I do thank you to all of you. And maybe Juan Carlos wants to share the camera. And
yeah, sure.
Oh, there you are.
Juan Carlos, venga, que te tenemos que ver. Muestra la cara, hombre. Venga, para despedirte de Lisa, por lo menos. Le puedes hablar en italiano.
Ok.
Juan Carlos, le puedes hablar en italiano, ya sabes.
Ciao, bellissima Lisa. Ti posso vedere sullo schermo. Come dico.
Grazie, perfetto.
I'm happy to see you on the screen. I love the Italian culture and the la pazzia, the crazy, and I think the adolescence is a good age for simile and metaphor of human being crisis, because we think about a lot of things. What is the meaning of the life? So I think the adolescence is a good point for starting to walk and to think about what we want to do and how we understand ourselves. So I think I was very impressed because I think that you brought two very nice films. I tried to watch it, and it's coincident with some reflection that I am doing at this time. So I think it's a very nice present that you give me, and also you give to all of us. And I want to thank also Pilar. She said the conclusion of the conference, and I agree with her that for young students, and I was very impressed because this was very high quality in the communication. And I think Eva is like the magic of the conference, because she permit that everyone could make well done, because she is very ability for taking us in contact. So I think she's.
I don't work alone, because it was also Don, Luis, Lucia, Esther.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I'm happy. But there is only one, come how say the Italian, soltanto avuto un problema, dobbiamo vederci, incontrarci qua a Seviglia. Ovviamente lo schermo è bello, ma non è il massimo, quindi ci dobbiamo provarci l'anno prossimo e speriamo que tutto vada bene. Y también para los otros participantes, los congresos virtuales están muy bien, son maravillosos, nos permite intercambiar, pero no hay nada como un encuentro personal que te permite prolongar esta jornada en conversaciones ya más específicas, donde uno intenta pues intercambiar sus intereses con colegas que, bueno, ha definido cuáles son sus afinidades, cuáles son sus posibilidades de hacer proyectos conjuntos. Y muchas de las colaboraciones que ahora tenemos y por las que se mantienen estos congresos surgieron de congresos pasados donde nos conocimos. Me ocurrió con Pilar y Lisa, y también a su vez con otras personas que nos ha permitido pues hacer publicaciones, hacer proyectos, y conozco otras personas que más allá, digamos, de lo que una organización de un congreso pueda controlar, entre ellos han llevado a cabo pues intercambios académicos, han llevado a cabo otros proyectos. Y bueno, de eso se trata. Yo creo que esta es una de las ruedas de la vida académica, ¿no? El tener espacios de encuentro donde no solo debe de exponerse el conocimiento, que está muy bien, pero el conocimiento es elaborado por personas humanas y tenemos un entorno. Y ese entorno es fundamental para que podamos desarrollar otros intereses, porque al final la ciencia se hace por personas y necesitamos pues experimentar las afinidades, la simpatía y los feedback que nos dan la gente o los colegas que nos permiten de algún modo pues decir, oye, esto me parece interesante, podríamos colaborar en esta línea o hacer cualquier otro tipo de aprofundimento, digamos, de investigación un poco más profunda sobre determinados asuntos. Así que yo quiero...
Bueno, Carlos, tú de momento no dejes escapar a Eva y al equipo que tienes ahí, a John y a todos los que han estado ahí. O sea, no los dejes escapar.
Bueno, la verdad, bueno, esto ya lo que pasa es que cuando uno se prolonga ya empiezan tenemos el riesgo de que nos acusen de abuelo cebolleta, ¿no? Pero lo cierto es que el COVID nos cogió a todos de un modo tremendo. Y yo estaba por cancelar toda esta historia porque dije, bueno, ahora intentar coordinar esto